Hello, all you freedom-loving people. The House voted overwhelmingly to finally release the Epstein files. President Trump hosted the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia at the White House, and now that the tariffs are working, Russia is pushing for a new meeting with Trump. Okay, let's get into it. The House of Representatives has just overwhelmingly passed a bill called the Epstein Files Transparency Act that will require the Department of Justice to release additional files that are related to Jeffrey Epstein. In the 427-1 vote, Representative Clay Higgins of Louisiana was the only member who voted against it. And after the House, the Senate also unanimously passed the bill. The bill will now go to President Trump for his signature. The Epstein Files Transparency Act was introduced by Representative Ro Khanna, and it was co-sponsored by Representative Thomas Massie. And it would require the DOJ to release all unclassified records, documents, messages, and investigative materials that are related to Jeffrey Epstein in a searchable, downloadable format within 30 days after the bill becomes law. The legislation would also prohibit the DOJ from withholding, delaying, or redacting records for reputational or political reasons. But the DOJ would be allowed to withhold records that identify victims, or records that contain child sexual abuse material. The DOJ could also hold back any records that might interfere with an ongoing investigation or court case, or that contain images of death, abuse, or injuries. The bill also requires that any redactions come with a written explanation made public in the Federal Register and sent to Congress. Within 15 days of releasing the files, the Attorney General would also need to report to the House and Senate Judiciary Committees. In the report, the Attorney General should explain why redactions were made and what types of records were released or withheld. The Attorney General should also list all government officials and politically exposed people that are mentioned in the released materials without hiding their names. Before the vote, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer said that so far the Democrats have selectively released files.
Next, Democrats resorted to selective leaks and doctored documents to mislead the American people. Oversight Committee Republicans have posted 65,000 pages of documents we have received to date. Democrats, by contrast, have released fewer than 1 dozen. In their latest selective leak, Democrats released just three of the 23,000 pages of documents from the Epstein estate. And they made redactions to 2 of those emails that changed both the context and the meaning of the 3 pages they released. When CNN called them out for their deceptive redactions, Representatives Stansbury and Crockett tried to blame Republicans for their own edits, for the Democrat Oversight Committee edits. After Democrats released only 3 emails, Republicans released over 23,000 pages. And what did Democrats say in response when we released every single document that we got? They claimed full transparency was meant to, quote, disorient or distract.
Comer then mentioned some of the items that the House Oversight Committee already found in the files.
In contrast, full transparency exposed how Epstein appears to be TDS patient zero. The evals reveal a journalist coached Epstein to blackmail then presidential candidate Donald Trump.
The gentleman is recognized.
The files also show that a House Democrat colluded with Epstein during the 2019 oversight hearing to discredit witness with a vendetta against President Trump. And unsurprisingly, Democrats have been silent about their colleagues' coordination with Epstein. Another email shows Democrat fundraisers invited Epstein to an event or to meet privately with Hakeem Jeffries as part of their 2013 effort to win a majority. So Hakeem Jeffries' campaign solicited money from Jeffrey Epstein. That's what we found in the last document batch. The files underscore why former President Trump must appear for his deposition. We've subpoenaed him. To date, the Democrats have done nothing to help us secure his appearance. I support full transparency. The Oversight Committee will continue to work to get the truth to the American people and to get justice for the victims. That's our goal of this investigation. With that, I yield back.
Before the vote, House Speaker Mike Johnson also said that he supports the bill, but he warned that it would inadequately protect victims and other innocent parties.
I'm going to vote to move this forward. I think it could be close to a unanimous vote because everybody here, all the Republicans, want to go on record to show they're for maximum transparency, but they also want to note that we're demanding that this stuff get corrected before it is ever moves through the process and is completed. I sincerely hope my Democrat colleagues will show the same level of urgency and enthusiasm when it comes to tackling the real issues facing the country that we got to get to. And that's what we really wanted to talk about this morning.
Even Democrat Representative Jim McGovern said that the bill was needed. McGovern said,
"At the end of the day, this is not about us, and it's not about politics. This is about the survivors, young girls who were exploited by powerful men who use money and power to take advantage of girls, some as young as 11 years old."
Also, yesterday, Larry Summers, a former Treasury Secretary under President Bill Clinton and who is currently a member of Harvard's faculty, said that he's stepping back from public life. Last week, his conversations with Jeffrey Epstein were released by the House Oversight Committee. Summers said in a statement, "I'm deeply ashamed of my actions and recognize the pain they have caused. I take full responsibility for my misguided decision to continue communicating with Mr. Epstein. While continuing to fulfill my teaching obligations, I will be stepping back from public commitments." President Trump hosted Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman at the White House today. This was the Crown Prince's first visit to the presidential residence in 7 years. President Trump greeted the Crown Prince with a welcome ceremony on the south lawn of the White House that included a flyover by 6 U.S. fighter jets, 3 F-35s and 3 F-15s. After the ceremony, they walked along the new Presidential Walk of Fame that President Trump created along the West Wing. During their meeting, the Crown Prince said that he will boost the investment partnership with the United States from $600 billion to $1 trillion. The investments will focus on what the Crown Prince described as real opportunities in areas such as artificial intelligence and magnets.
You know, when you invest $1 trillion, that's national security for us, too, because it creates jobs, it creates a lot of things. And I would say, Scott, right, when you hear one country is putting $1 trillion into the United States, that creates national security. And, you know, I think that they don't have to say that, but I think a big part of that is also the fact that tariffs are in play. But even beyond tariffs, that's a real ally that will do that, creates a lot of power for the United States.
President Trump also said that he thinks the Crown Prince will have a very good feeling toward the Abraham Accords after the meeting.
You know, I don't want to use the word commitment, but we've had a very good talk on the Abraham Accords. We talked about one state, two state. You know, we talked about a lot of things in a short period of time. We'll be discussing it further, too. But I think you have a very good feeling toward the Abraham Accords.
Yes, definitely, Mr. President. We want peace for the Israelis. We want peace for the Palestinians. We want them to coexist peacefully in the region. And we will do our best to reach that day.
Tonight, President Trump and First Lady Melania will host the Crown Prince for a formal dinner in the East Room. Today's visit came a day after President Trump said that he intends to approve the sale of advanced F-35 Lightning II stealth fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. India's Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister Hardeep Singh Puri announced a deal on Monday to buy 2.2 million tons of liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, from the U.S. in 2026, which is about 10% of India's annual imports. This is the first ever LPG procurement contract between an Indian state-owned oil company and the United States. The deal will bring two benefits. The first is to reduce the trade deficit between India and the United States. Puneet Banka, an equity analyst in the energy sector at Nomura Securities, points out that India's total LPG imports are about 20 to 21 million tons per year. If 10% of this supply comes from the United States at current prices, this means that India will import an additional $1 billion worth of products from the United States. However, Banka also said that compared to India's $40 billion trade surplus with the U.S., this additional import is not much. So the second benefit is even more important. That is to reduce India's dependence on Russian energy. In August, President Trump announced that he would raise tariffs on India to 50%, citing India's large purchases of Russian oil. And in September, President Trump ratcheted up his criticism of India, calling the trade relationship with India an utter unilateral disaster. India's Commerce Minister, who was in the U.S. for trade talks at the time, said that India would increase trade in energy products with the U.S. over the next few years. Since then, the positions have eased, and on September 10th, President Trump said, "The U.S. tariffs on India are really high because of Russian oil imports, but they've cut back dramatically now, so we're going to lower them. But now that they have significantly reduced their Russian oil imports, the U.S. will lower the tariffs." President Trump also said that the U.S. and India are very close to reaching a trade agreement. If India reduces its imports of Russian crude oil and eventually reaches a trade deal with the U.S. and gets a reduction in tariffs from the U.S., then India will also benefit. So it's a win-win situation. Of course, this would not be good news for Russia. The U.S. sanctions imposed on Rosneft and Lukoil have reduced Moscow's revenue from oil selling, according to the Finance Ministry. The U.S. Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control reported that the sanctions imposed on October 22nd have the expected effect of limiting Russian revenues by reducing the price of Russian oil and consequently the country's ability to finance its military efforts against Ukraine. Meanwhile, President Trump said on Sunday that he supports a congressional push for a bill to sanction countries that trade with Russia. He said that doing business with Russia would be subject to very severe sanctions. This is President Trump's strongest statement yet on cutting off Russian capital. U.S. congressmen are currently pushing for tariffs of up to 500% on the countries trading with Russia.
Well, I hear they're doing that, and that's okay with me. They're passing legislation, or the Republicans are putting in legislation that very tough. It's sanctioning, etc., on any country doing business with Russia. They may add Iran to that, as you know. I suggested it. So any country that does business with Russia will be very severely sanctioned.
President Trump's acquiescence to the bill would change the situation. A senior Republican staffer said if the president does support it, this bill could not only pass, it could have a substantial impact. So it's Russia that's anxious now. The Kremlin expressed hope on Monday that another summit between President Vladimir Putin and President Trump would be held soon. Putin's spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, said, "As soon as this preparation is completed and the conditions for holding the summit are created, we hope it will take place." The last time Putin and Trump met was at the summit in Alaska in August when they discussed a possible plan to end the war in Ukraine. Last month, the two heads of state announced plans to hold another summit in the Hungarian capital Budapest, but President Trump canceled the plan shortly afterwards, saying that he didn't think the timing was right. This was mainly because he was disappointed with Putin. He said that every time he spoke with Vladimir Putin, the conversation was good, but then nothing happened. On Monday, the International Crimes Tribunal, based in Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, found the country's ousted Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, and the former Home Minister, Asaduzzaman Khan, guilty of crimes against humanity, and they were sentenced to death. However, this is a trial in absentia, meaning that Hasina and Khan, the two defendants, were not present. They both had fled to India last year. A total of 3 people were on trial, though. Alongside Hasina and Khan, the former Inspector General of Police, Abdullah Al-Aman, was also on trial. Al-Aman was the only defendant present. He was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. His sentence was lenient because he had accused Hasina, which made him a tainted witness. Last year, the government of Bangladesh passed a bill on the inheritance of government posts, by family members of those who have inherited the revolution, which sparked mass anger among the population, especially among young students. This means that government positions will continue to be held by the families of the regime. The more families there are, the fewer opportunities there are for ordinary people. The protests began in June of 2024 and quickly escalated in July of that year. The Hasina government responded with a heavy hand, and the situation became increasingly violent. Hasina characterized the protesters as criminals, terrorists, and traitors. Violent clashes and deaths occurred in various places. The health advisor to Bangladesh's current interim government indicated that more than 800 people were killed and about 14,000 injured. The United Nations report in February estimated that as many as 1,400 people may have been killed. This backfired and led to more protests. Hasina was forced to resign and flee to India, ending her 15-year rule. Hasina was charged with crimes including murder, attempted murder, torture, and ordering the use of deadly weapons against protesters. The judges said it was crystal clear that she expressed her incitement to the activists of her party, and furthermore, she expressed that she ordered the killing and elimination of the protesting students. The court broadcast the entire trial live for several hours. It was the harshest sentence ever handed down against a leader in the history of the country. Hasina's Awami League party has called for a nationwide strike starting on Monday to protest the verdict, calling the court an illegal court. However, more people were against Hasina. The courtroom was packed on the day of the trial, including members of the victims' families. They cheered and applauded when the verdict was delivered. There were crowds protesting against Hasina who were gathered outside her old mansion. They threw their arms in the air and cheered when they heard that the court had ruled that crimes against humanity had been committed, sentencing Hasina to death. Hasina claimed that the charges against her were unjust and that she and Khan acted in good faith and tried to minimize the loss of life. She condemned the verdict as biased and politically motivated. Hasina's son, Sajib Ousted, is currently in the United States. He told the Associated Press that the verdict was meaningless. His mother is very safe in India. On Monday, Bangladesh's Home Ministry urged India to repatriate Hasina and Khan as soon as possible. India's Foreign Ministry said that it had been informed of the court's decision, but did not comment on whether the two would be handed over to Dhaka. Bangladesh achieved economic growth during Hasina's rule. However, she was the subject of much public controversy. She had been accused of leading the government toward a one-party system, using internet security laws to suppress freedom of speech and practicing political violence. She also maintained close ties with Beijing. Under her government, Bangladesh became a partner in the Chinese Communist Party's One Belt, One Road initiative. 1 month before she fled, Hasina visited Beijing and signed 28 agreements with the Chinese Communist Party, mainly related to trade and investment. The CCP's Belt and Road project in Bangladesh is now overshadowed by political turmoil and a change in leadership, so it could be overhauled by the interim government. Let's take a look at how Xi Jinping has been doing recently since the fourth plenary session. Our analysis at the time was that although Xi Jinping had retained all his titles, he was out of power, and he's just waiting for the right time to make a decent exit. And what is happening now confirms our analysis. Several CCP officials have recently been subjected to investigations by the Central Commission for Disciplinary Inspection and the State Supervision Commission. All of those who are being investigated are allies of Xi Jinping or his family. On November 7th, Feng Hongwei, the secretary of the Municipal Party Committee of Xi'an, which is the capital of Shaanxi Province, was investigated. The information on the official website is very simple. It just says that Feng Hongwei is suspected of serious disciplinary violations and is currently undergoing a disciplinary examination and supervisory investigation by the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection and the State Supervision Commission. His positions, the secretary of the Xi'an Municipal Party Committee and the standing committee of the Provincial Party Committee, are not low positions at the local level, but from the central government's point of view, they are not high titles. But there's something special about Feng Hongwei. He is a native of Fuping in Shaanxi province, and he is a real fellow villager of Xi Jinping, meaning that they were born in the same town. Within the CCP system, this is a very close relationship. Even if Xi Jinping does not personally know Feng Hongwei's status would be higher than that of an ordinary official. So Feng Hongwei's being investigated hints that something is wrong in Xi Jinping's lair. This case was investigated by the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection, the CCDI, which also shows that this case goes beyond Shaanxi province and is directly related to the central government. 2 days before the official announcement, the news had already appeared on overseas social media. The earliest person to disclose the story was Edwin Yingke, a self-media person living in Australia. On November 5th, he reported that Feng Hongwei was raided and taken away by the CCDI when he was discussing religious work at the ancient Guanyin Zen temple in Chang'an district that morning. His life secretary, confidential secretary, security secretary, and duty secretary were also taken under control at the same time. His wife was also detained by the Shaanxi Discipline Inspection Commission. The fact that Edwin Yingke was able to reveal the information on the day of the incident before the official announcement was made indicates that he had very reliable and high-level sources. Therefore, the rest of his expose should also be relatively credible. He claims that Feng Hongwei is close to Xi Jinping, the younger brother of Xi Jinping. They are both related to Yao Lijun, the propaganda minister of the Xi'an Municipal Party Committee, who was previously under investigation. According to Edwin, 60% of Yao's corruption money went to Xi Jinping, 20% went to Feng Hongwei, and Yao kept only 20% for himself. Another version suggests that Feng Hongwei belongs to Mrs. Xi Jinping's faction. The evidence is that Feng Hongwei was the Secretary General of the Provincial Party Committee in May of 2021. He was recommended by a close official of Mrs. Xi Jinping. Whichever of these two accounts is more factual, it is certain that Feng Hongwei is a force who is associated with Xi Jinping. A few days later, on November 10th, another local bigwig fell from grace. This time, it was Ma Zhijun, the Deputy Secretary of the Municipal Party Committee and Secretary of the Political and Legal Committee of Urumqi, which is the capital of Xinjiang Province. From November 1st to November 10th, 3 officials have fallen from power in Xinjiang in a row. Their scrutiny collectively points to Ma Xingrui, the former party secretary of the Xinjiang Autonomous Region, who just stepped down in July of this year. Ma Xingrui is regarded as a close confidant of Xi Jinping's inner circle and has a close personal relationship with Peng Liyuan, who is Xi Jinping's wife. The Financial Times quoted a source as saying that Ma had been in and out of Xi's home in his early years and was one of the closest senior officials to the couple. Edwin Yingke, the self-media personality with inside connections that we mentioned earlier, said in July that Ma's wife was taken away by the CCDI for investigation on July 5th. She was suspected of borrowing the name of Peng Liyuan, Xi Jinping's wife, to amass wealth and transfer more than 7 billion yuan, which is equal to about $1 billion, through Hong Kong to Ma's daughter and son-in-law's family accounts in Canada and to the family office in Singapore. Let's note the timing of the incident. It was July 1st when officials announced that Ma Xingrui was no longer secretary of the Xinjiang Party Committee. This tells us that he had another appointment, but without stating what his new position was. 4 days later, his wife was investigated. The Ma Xingrui case has affected Peng Liyuan, Xi Jinping's wife. Recently, there have been several rumors that she has been restricted from traveling, such as canceling her trip to South Korea. U.S.-based political commentator Chen Bakong pointed out that Ma Xingrui's downfall will put Peng Liyuan's position in extreme danger. This method of gradually removing the cronies around a certain senior official and then removing the central figure from office is known in China by the very graphic analogy as trimming the skirts. The same approach was used to purge Xi Jinping of almost all of his rival party factions at the start of his rise to power more than a decade ago. So now it's very clear that several recent events indicate the anti-Xi Jinping faction has accelerated its pursuit and is closing in on Xi Jinping. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family because everybody deserves to know the truth.